Okay, hi there. I'm going to talk a little bit about dualism in this brief lecture. I'm Matt Andrzejewski, and hopefully this clears up some of the issues and problems that we have with a philosophical position that we historically call dualism. Now, there's many sort of subtypes of dualism. I'm going to talk about mind-body dualism in its sort of classic sense that we get from René Descartes. And René Descartes is a French philosopher and mathematician. He does a lot of really interesting stuff. He is sometimes credited with being sort of the father of psychology and so on. But Descartes is doing a thinking experiment. Sometimes this is referred to as the argument from extreme doubt. Okay, and so René Descartes is sitting around and he's thinking and he's doubting, and this isn't any old generic doubt. This isn't like your easy doubt. This is extreme doubt. He's not doubting that something happened today. He's not doubting his memory, for example, of something. He's doubting things like he doubts that his arm exists. He thinks his arm might just be a figment of his imagination. I mean, he starts to doubt that his legs actually exist. But he gets up when he walks around, but anything, well, maybe I'm just being manipulated. Maybe, sort of like maybe I'm a brain in a vat being manipulated by a super scientist. Because after all, these experiences of sensation, of touch, of feeling, of sight, of sound, of taste are all inputs, external inputs via neural pathways. And maybe my eyes don't exist. Maybe those are just like computer screens that are projecting on the back of something. Maybe I don't exist. This is his argument from extreme doubt. This isn't just any old little doubt like I doubt, it's going to rain today. This is extreme doubt. This isn't garden variety doubt. This is extreme doubt. I doubt my body exists. And he comes to the conclusion that he can do that. I can doubt my body exists. I'm just what I see, what I feel, what I taste, what I touch is just a figment of my imagination. But then he takes it one step further and he says, can I doubt my mind exists? And he can't do it. He can't take that next step to doubt that his mind exists. Because after all, the mind is the doubting organ, right? The way where we doubt, where we think, those sorts of things. That's what the mind does, is it doubts. So how could I doubt if I didn't have a mind? And he concludes, he says, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But he's got to, he comes to this logical conclusion, but he's got to realize, well, the implication of this is that then there are two things. Because I can doubt my body exists, but I can't doubt my mind exists. So there must be body stuff, material stuff, and there must be mind stuff like soul and spirit and material. So René Descartes argues that there are two substances in the world, body stuff and mind stuff, and we term this mind-body dualism. Okay? But even critics in his time pointed out that this wasn't very logical. This was sort of problematic because, in fact, how is it that the mind then can affect the body? I mean, because if there's mind stuff and there's body stuff and there's no interaction, then who cares? You're just coming up with fictional, magical properties that don't do anything. But Descartes much more, he's saying that the mind affects the body. The mind changes the body. The mind orders the body to do things, so to speak. But philosophers in his day criticized him, and they said, how is that the case? How can the ghost push you? How can the immaterial stuff affect the material stuff? How can the non-physical stuff affect the physical stuff? Because what affects physical stuff is other physical stuff. What affects material stuff are material forces. And he says, It's the pineal gland. And people are like, what, WTF? What? Wait a minute, where'd you come up with that one? Wait a minute, that's kind of goofy. And Descartes was smart, right? He was smartest, one of the smartest guys around, right? He says, well, the pineal gland is the one structure in the brain in which there is only one of them. All the other structures in the brain, there are two of them. So the pineal gland must be where it's happening. It must be where the mind is influencing the body. Now, there's some problems with this. So, if you're still having trouble with dualism, think about the movie The Matrix. And if you've seen this movie, hopefully you have, the main character Neo, right? He is he comes to the conclusion, or he finds out that he's just his whole entire experience is being manipulated by a supercomputer via neural pathways of spine and brain and so on. His reality, in reality, he's living in this pod, and his whole sensory experience, his whole perceptual experience, his whole life is being played out in a computer program. And what he's really is a prisoner, and he's part of these pods that are generating electricity to further propagate the matrix. Okay, this is a movie essentially about dualism, or the ideas are very dualistic in nature, and that is the reality that we experience is not the reality that we're in, or they might be different. So some people say that psychology is the study of mind and behavior, and your book is pretty clear on this, and so am I, and that is that the study of stuff, the way we study stuff, is with the methods of science. But well, how do we study the mind? If the mind is immaterial, if it's soul-like, if it's spirit-like, what do we have to study it? What is the method of research for the mind? We don't have one. So I say that only the methods of science can be used in psychology. They're deterministic, they're systematic, they involve public, we can see them. They involve data, they involve questions that can be answered, and they're falsifiable. And you say, well, or somebody might say, well, you can't prove that X doesn't exist, my mind or spirit or ghost. And that is a logical error we call proving the negative. And that is the burden of proof falls on the person claiming something exists rather than on the person that makes no such claim. Two examples of that are Russell's teapot and the flying spaghetti monster. His noodleness. If I said to you, the flying spaghetti monster doesn't exist, and you say, you know he doesn't, I say, prove he doesn't exist, and you say, I can't, that doesn't mean the flying spaghetti monster exists. That's exactly the argument of Russell's teapot. He said, prove to me that there is no teapot floating in space between Earth and Mars. I can't. That doesn't mean that there must be a teapot floating between Earth and Mars. We don't know, but we can't prove it. The burden of proof is on the person that is claiming something, not the person that's claiming the opposite. When we talk about this stuff, we're going to be talking about data, and I want to make sure that we remember that answers to questions about the feelings, about those sorts of things, they're still giving us answers in words, and we know that words and that people's answers are sensitive to a whole lot of variables. Intelligence is not something that we have, right? It's a measure of how people have answered on a test. And those answers are influenced by a lot of different things. The way you answer questions of a survey depend on, for example, who's asking the questions. All right, so hopefully that cleared that up, and we'll talk to you soon.